Hi friends, welcome back to Nevermore House. My name's Melanie. Thank you for joining me. So today we are going to be making a Puerto Rican traditional staple during the holidays, which is called pasteles. And my mom is going to be joining me in prepping everything and getting it all prepared. So just a couple things to go over before we start peeling all our vegetables and getting into it. This is my family's recipe, so there's different variations. This was taught to my mother by my grandfather and passed down that way. So this is just our family's traditional recipe for this. So we're just gonna go ahead and get started. All right, so this is my mom, Zoraida. She is gonna be joining me and doing all the prep work and everything. And we are just in the beginning of our Thanksgiving prep. So we've got our ingredients here, all our vegetables that we need to peel and prep and chop up and do all the fun stuff with. So we've got guineo verde here, which are green bananas. They're not the ripe eating bananas that you eat. So we've got a bunch of those. We've got plantains, we've got a couple of those. And then we've got another vegetable called Malanga. This is a root vegetable. It's, I think, a variation of taro root. I believe it's interchangeable as well, because I've used taro root when this was not available and my pasteles came out great. And then we're gonna be using some potatoes as well. And those are all our vegetables that we're gonna be prepping and peeling now. And then we're gonna give you a couple tips and tricks along the way to kind of help ease things as we go, because the plantains and the guineos can get very messy, and which is why we're wearing gloves. They have a tendency to turn your hands black and sticky, and it's very gross. So we've, over the years, have learned some tricks to get these prepped and peeled and ready. So we're gonna go ahead and do that. So first thing we're gonna do is the guineos. We actually stick them in the microwave for just a couple seconds. I think it's about 30 seconds to a minute.
Yes.
And it kind of helps loosen the skin so that when we peel them, it just peels off a lot easier. So she's gonna go ahead and get those started. Do you do the plantains as well?
Yes.
Okay. So we're gonna get those started. As she's prepping those, I am going to start doing the malanga. And then the malanga, you just peel like a potato, honestly. And then once these are peeled, we're gonna dice them up. Well, not dice them up, we're just gonna slice them into a little bit more manageable pieces, because we're gonna go ahead and run them through the food processor to go ahead and get it into what we call a masa, which is like a dough. I think that's what it translates to. And then just to go over how we peel the guineos, the easiest way, if I can get this off, is to just cut off the ends and then slice down the back side, and then just kind of use the knife to kind of peel that skin a little bit to pull it away from the banana itself. And then for the most part, it should peel away pretty easily. Does that happen all the time? Absolutely not. Especially not with me. Mine tend to fall apart like this one does. I can never get a good peel. Okay, so now I'm gonna go ahead and do our potatoes. We are estimating we're only gonna need about 5. These are kind of medium-ish to small potatoes. If you're using larger potatoes, obviously use a lesser amount. Or if you're using smaller potatoes, use more. But right now we're just estimating we'll probably need about 5 medium to small potatoes. So that's what I'm gonna go ahead and do. And then for those of you wondering, I am going to rinse the malanga and the potatoes off once I get them all in the bowl to get off all the skins and roots and stuff like that. And then you also want to let it soak in some salt water once you get them rinsed off, to just help prevent any browning or anything like that. Potatoes are all done. I'm gonna swim over here. Just get these rinsed off. All right, so I've rinsed off my malanga and potatoes really well. Got all those little root ends, bits and ends all off. So I'm gonna go ahead and add some salt in there. And that's just to help prevent it from turning brown. So if you haven't gathered by now, this is a very labor-intensive dish, but it's a staple and it's delicious. Granted, it's probably an acquired taste, I'm not gonna lie to you. And fun fact, as a kid, I actually hated them growing up. It wasn't until I was an adult that I actually could appreciate them, and now I love them. So my mom started working on the plantains, and we decided we're probably gonna only do about 3 plantains, just because the more plantains you do, the harder the masa becomes, and you don't want a masa that's too hard, because then you have to add more potatoes to kind of soften it. You want it, we'll show you the texture of the masa that you're looking for once we get to grinding up all the vegetables in the food processor. Alrighty, so we're gonna get the island cleaned up, and then we're gonna go ahead and rinse these off as well, get off any little bits and stuff that may have attached itself to there, and then we'll go ahead and get started getting them ground up in the food processor. Oh.
Here I'm just going in and with some pork tenderloin. Traditionally you would use pork shoulder, but I find using pork tenderloin just gives me more meat. It's just more bang for your buck, as opposed to the pork shoulder where you get a large fat cap, the skin, and the bone. So I just feel like going the pork tenderloin route just gives you more bang for your buck. Here I'm just dicing up the pork tenderloin into, I'd probably say about 1/4 inch size cubes, because you want them small enough to fit inside the pastele, but you don't want them so big that you can't fit that much. And then even though I went the pork tenderloin route, you still want to make sure you remove any excess fat and that silver skin that can sometimes be on there. Here I'm just going in my heavy bottom pot with some acote oil or annatto seed oil. That's very easy to make. If that's something you guys are interested in me making a video on, please let me know in the comments. I'm just adding in my pork here. Now I'm just going in to season our pork. I'm gonna go ahead and add in a hefty amount of adobo because we do have a lot of meat here. I'd probably say it's probably about 3 to 4 pounds of meat. So I'm going in with quite a bit of adobo instead of salt and pepper. That's typically what I will use in my household. It just, to me, has more flavor. I'm just going in with some onion powder as well. And then I'm also adding some sazon as well. I put my sazon in a shaker, so I would probably recommend for this amount of meat, probably 2 to 3 packets of sazon. I'm also going in with a little bit of oregano as well. I'm using ground oregano as opposed to oregano leaves. That's just my preference. I feel I can just get a better flavoring. And here I'm just adding, I'd probably say about 2 tablespoons of fresh garlic paste. And you want to go in with one of your most important ingredients, which is sofrito, which is just a mixture of peppers and herbs and onions and garlic. If that's also something else you guys are interested in, I can definitely make a video on that. Just let me know in the comments. I'm adding just a little bit of water. You do want to add, I do end up adding some more water. I probably add a total, I'd say about a cup to a cup and a half of water. And that's just to kind of help get the meat to cook and almost kind of like a stew, because you're wanting to get a broth as well from the meat, because you're going to add that flavored broth into the masa itself. That's going to help flavor the masa. Here I've had my meat cooking for probably about 20 to 25 minutes. The meat is cooked through. We're just still kind of simmering and just getting that flavor profile built. I'm adding in some salad olives with the peppers and the brine from the olives. And then I'm just gonna let this simmer for probably another 15 minutes. And that's just to kind of help soften the meat a little bit. You don't want a really tough meat. Here you can see how much broth that meat created, and then we are going to go ahead and reserve some of this broth to add to our masa. So here I'm just ladling out some broth into just a mason jar and just setting that aside. And I did pre-cook my meat the night before I made the masa. That's just to save myself some time and just make things easier for myself. You can see that I ladled out plenty of broth. You'd rather have more broth than you need than not enough. And I did leave a little bit of broth in the meat itself to just kind of help keep the meat hydrated. Now I'm just ladling out my meat into a separate container so it can come down to room temperature. And like I said, I did pre-cook my meat the night before, so if you're doing it day of, you do want to separate it out and just kind of let it come down to room temperature before you start making the pasteles and adding them to your masa, because you don't want to potentially pre-cook your masa while you're making it.
so now that all our root vegetables are all peeled and diced up or cut up, I'm gonna go ahead and start getting them ground up in the food processor. I'm just putting on a fresh new pair of gloves just because I have long nails and I don't like getting food stuck under my nails. So I try to use gloves as often as possible. I've got plenty, so. So we're just gonna kind of do a mix of from both bowls to just kind of, like I was discussing it with my mom, you kind of want to do some potatoes with the plantains and the green bananas, just because the green bananas and plantains are more dense. So they take a little bit longer and a little more work in the food processor to kind of break down. So, and since we have more of those, we kind of want to get those started. And then we'll throw a couple more potatoes in there. Now that we're done grinding everything, you want to make sure you get everything out of the food processor. Just be careful because those are sharp blades. Okay, so you can see here this really white texture. This is all the root vegetable. This is the malanga, and you can see kind of the darker color down here. That's the guineo with the potatoes. So we're just going to go ahead and get everything mixed up before we start adding in our seasonings. You can see it's kind of thick, but we go ahead and add some carnation milk or evaporated milk to kind of get that smoother texture that we're looking for. And then you also kind of want to just mix it, make sure there's no chunks or anything like that. And I feel like there may be sometimes you just kind of got to go in. See, there's a chunk of potato right there. So we're going to go ahead and take that out and put it back in our food processor. You can see, for the most part, this is a really smooth texture, and that's what you're looking for. Alrighty, so now we're gonna go ahead and add a can of evaporated milk, and this is just gonna help the texture and make it a bit smoother. Alright, so now I'm going to go ahead and add some acote oil. This is homemade acote oil that I make. I use it for cooking, things like that. And this is going to add some color. We're going to add some salt. Not too much, just because we're going to add a couple more ingredients that do have some salt in them as well. I'm just going to pour some in there. What should I use? Alright, and then I'm just going to add some sofrito as well. This is also homemade that I make. That's good. And this is just adding layers of flavor to the pastel masa. And now I'm going in with a total of 6 packets of sazon for this amount. So this is 3. And this is gonna add some more color to the masa as well. And now the piece de la resistance. So we cooked up the meat that's going into the pastele. It's stuffed with pork. Traditionally, you can do it with chicken. I know some people do like a soy chorizo or something like that. That makes it a vegan option or a vegetarian option. This is the juice that came from the pork, and then we've got that coming in a little bit later in the video on how to make the pork. So we're just gonna pour about half the jar in right now. So that's probably about, I'm gonna say about 1.25 cups maybe. And this is gonna help make that a smoother texture as well. We just wanna make sure we grab everything from the sides. And you can see that masa has a great color now. And so we're just gonna add a little more, probably, I'm gonna say let's just go about 1/4 cup at a time.
Yeah, it should be good.
Alrighty, so we've got our masa all prepared, we've got our pork prepared, and then we've got our acote oil here. We are gonna go ahead and start assembling our pasteles. And typically you wanna have, it's a parchment paper type of material. I only know it called as pastele paper, which you typically get at your Spanish grocery store. So that's what we've got here. So we're gonna go ahead and start preparing them.
Okay, so once you get your pastele paper laid out, you're gonna wanna add a little bit of acote oil. That's gonna help the pastele masa from sticking to the paper. It makes it so that once it's cooked, it can easily slide off of the paper. A lot of families use plantain leaves. I've done that before. I don't find there's any benefit to it. I don't feel it adds any additional flavor or anything to that. So then once you've got the acote oil spread out a little bit, you're gonna add a hefty spoonful of the masa, and then you're gonna take some of the meat and kind of put it a little well in the masa, and then that way when you fold over the paper, it kind of envelops, the masa envelops the meat. And you can see here, I'm just gonna go ahead and fold the paper in half. And then this fold, I'm not 100% sure how to explain it. You kind of just want to fold it in half and fold the paper in, I guess, about 1/4 of the top or half the top. And then you're going to fold it again, shake it a little bit, and then fold it again so that you kind of have this long shaped here. And then you're going to kind of push the masa and then fold up the ends, because what you're trying to make is almost like a brick shape. And then just kind of squeeze that in. You don't want it spread out really thin. And then you're going to fold in that other end and tuck it. And then we're also going to take one that I had already prepared, and you want to double stack them. So once you have the 2 pasteles, you're going to take some twine, some cotton twine or butcher's twine, and you're gonna go ahead and just tie the 2 pasteles together. And here, I'm not sure what kind of tie this is called. This is just one that I've always seen used on pasteles, and that's how I was taught. So you just kind of want to make sure you double knot, because you don't want it to slip out when you're cooking them. So tying it this way will ensure that they stay together in the freezer or wherever you're storing them, and then together when they're being cooked as well. And then once you're done tying it, I'm just going to snip off the extra ends of the twine. And then that is it. That is your wrapped and ready pastele. It's ready for cooking or for storing. And here I'm just showing you the masa up close and the meat. And if you notice in the masa, there is a little bit of liquid separation, which is perfectly normal. And now we just got our 2-person assembly line, and we are just making our way through these 2 bowls of masa and meat, getting all our pasteles wrapped and ready for the holiday. Here are all our pasteles wrapped and ready. We ended up coming out with 20 bundles.
Alrighty, so we've got our pastele all cooked. And how you want to cook these, if you're cooking them from frozen, which is typically how you usually store them, you want to boil them for about an hour to an hour and a half in heavily salted water. And it also depends just on how many you're cooking, and that's going to vary your time length as well. I just did 1 bundle, so it took me about an hour and 15. So we're going to go ahead and taste it. I've got my homemade hot sauce here, pique, that I make myself. And there's a big discussion, for lack of a better term, as to whether you put ketchup or pique on it. I'm a pique girl. I have family members who are ketchup people, so I like pique. And then we're just gonna go ahead and taste it. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. And there's meat in every bite, so I'm very happy with the way these turned out. All right, thank you for joining me, and then we'll see you next time we're in my kitchen. Thank you. Have a great day. Bye.